Hey everyone, and welcome to our presentation. We are the Graveyard Shift, and today we're excited to show you the game that we've been working on, Nature's Grave. Before we get into it, let's introduce the team behind the project. Our team consists of two halves, our CCI team, responsible for programming, and our DIGM team, responsible for the art in the game. On our CCI team we have Kevin Cheng, player, environment, enemy developer, Peng Chen, programming lead, Tiffany Ly, UI UX developer, Cynthia Harris, player environment developer, Dawei Chi, UI UX developer, and myself, Jarod Mellus, backend and sound developer. On our DIGM team, we have Lily Raphael, UI UX and website designer, Sana Hadavi, producer, Mary Kilgallen, animator, Hannah Bergman, player animator, Liam Shea, enemy design animator, Caroline Kottmeyer, sound designer, Brittany Tu, UI UX designer, and Chris Epiray, environment and enemy designer. Next, Tiffany will present an overview of our game.
The overview of our game is Nature's Grave is a 2D action-adventure game, with target audience being teen and up. Target platform is PC. Nature's Grave focuses on a unique art style with fast combat. The premise of the game is that the player is a nature spirit, whose purpose is defeating monsters, which in turn cleanses the evil, stagnant environment around them. The world has become corrupted, and it is the player's duty to take action to purify and save the world.
One phenomena that fruited from the COVID-19 pandemic was the general increase of interest toward games due to the amount of free time people have at home. We saw this as a good opportunity for game developers like us who love video games to contribute to the industry by making Nature's Grave. We want to use our game as a way to encourage people to care about our planet more, because as we all know, our Mother Earth is slowly dying. On top of this, our game includes stunning visual, fast action combat, and engaging boss fights.
When thinking about the kind of game a smaller group of developers may create, we see that in recent history, the indie market has found its greatest successes with two-dimensional games, and especially action games. Games like Hollow Knight and Hades have gained wild popularity in a relatively short period of time, thanks to their intuitive mechanics and compelling gameplay. Ori and the Blind Forest, and later Greece, took a 2D format and added an artistic flourish that makes them captivating to watch. Our aim is to capitalize on this with an artful game that both looks and feels great to play.
This diagram demonstrates the general game flow the player has to go through in NG. The diagram consists of the player file game components, and the lines indicates the connections between each component. The game interface shows all the game information to the player. For example, the game characters, enemies, and the current map of the level. The player can use keyboard, mouse, or game controllers to access game information and perform their operations. For example, player can use keyboard to kill all the enemies in the current level, and the map of that level will get updated. As for the file system, player can choose to load the previous game progress when they open the game, and they can choose to save the game progress when they unlock a new level.
As for the technology that we're using to create Nature's Grave, for the programming team, we're using Visual Studio Code as the primary IDE, and we're using Unity as our primary game engine, and lastly, we're using Perforce as our version control. As for the art team, they're using Audacity and Logic Pro to create the music assets in the game, and they're also using Adobe products such as Photoshop to create other assets in the game. And lastly, they use something called Texture Packer to pack 2D sprites into sprite sheets.
So, what made us choose to use Unity over other dedicated 2D game engines, such as GameMaker Studio? Well, it's currently the most popular game engine on the market, and more importantly, it's the one that's taught in all of our courses. Because of this, it's the engine that we're all already the most familiar with. We also chose to use Perforce over the very popular Git workflow, mainly because it's a requirement for our DIGM team due to it being a more standard practice in the game industry. Next, Tiffany is going to discuss the art style of the game.
Here, we discuss the art style that comprises Nature's Grave. Our focus is on a unique art style that emphasizes the game's purpose. The game's motive is to convey the idea that we need to preserve our environment. We start off with a desolate and grim landscape. The main player character is Nature Spirit, as shown on the left. The idea is that the surrounding environment changes to the greener pastures after the player has reached their final destination. Another important aspect of the game is the monsters and enemies that the player encounters and fights. The enemies take the form of grotesque, warped creatures that have been affected by the pollution around them. The colors of the enemy are dark, bleak colors with the reds and the black. The player has to actively fight to clean the world. Here we have 3 enemy types in the game. On the left is the tongue beast, in the middle is our demon fly, and towards the right is our crab enemy.
In addition to moving around the game world, the player may use the left mouse button to attack. Up to 3 attacks may be completed in a row before the player character must recover, as shown in the animated image on the screen. Additionally, pressing the spacebar will cause the player character to dash. A dash may be performed directly after an attack, avoiding the recovery time. The dash also allows the player character to leap across gaps in the ground, so long as the dash ends on solid ground. Both attacking and dashing decrease the stamina bar, which is always shown on the bottom left of the screen. If it is empty, the player will be unable to dash or attack. However, the stamina bar does regenerate over time. Finally, pressing the right mouse button will cause the player to throw out a grapple in front of them. If nothing is within its range, it quickly retracts. When it connects to a tree stump or a large enemy, the player will be pulled to that point. If it connects with a smaller enemy, that enemy will be pulled towards the player character.
In Nature's Grave, we have 4 normal enemies that you encounter throughout the game and 2 boss enemies that you need to defeat to progress through the game. First, we have the Demon Fly, which has fast movement and will try to maintain a distance away from the player. It shoots projectiles that leaves pools of poison on the ground and will damage the player over time. The Crab enemy has slow movement, and when the player is in range, it will raise its claws and walk towards the player. When the player is close enough, it will slam its claws down, dealing damage in a large area. The Tongue Beast also has slow movement and has 2 types of attacks. First, if the player is too far away, it jumps towards the player, dealing damage in an area when it lands. When it is close, it will try to align itself horizontally with the player and attacks quickly by shooting out its tongue sideways towards the player. The Lung Tree is the first boss that you encounter. It is stationary and also has 2 types of attacks. It will shoot spikes up from underneath the ground in specific patterns. It will also randomly throw out smaller enemies called lung bombs. The lung bombs are fast and will chase the player. If it gets close enough, it will explode, dealing damage in a large area. The last enemy is the final boss, which has 3 types of attacks. It has a tentacle attack that strikes down in specific patterns. If the player is directly below the skulls, it will perform a punch attack, shooting the skull out at the player. The last attack is a poison projectile, similar to the Demon Fly, but with a much larger area, which prevents the player from staying too close. The final boss is designed to use attacks similar to other enemies seen in the game, but on a much larger scale. Every time the boss loses a third of its health, it will move to the next island, which has a more difficult area for the player to fight on. Each enemy has different attacks and weaknesses that the player will have to learn to be able to fight them effectively.
Our save load system relies on .NET's data contract serializer for serialization to XML files. This allows us to save player state, which includes properties like position, health, current scene, relevant game flags, etc. Players will autosave upon entering new areas or defeating bosses. They also have the option to delete their save file in the save menu at any time. Next, Peng is going to present a demo of our game.
So here I present the game Nature's Grave itself. When the player first comes into our game, they will be presented with our main menu, which has 5 buttons. The first button is the start button, which obviously starts the game for the player. The second button is the settings button, which brings the player to the settings menu and allow them to adjust the in-game volume to their liking. If I drag this to the left side, the volume will be lower. if I drag this to the right side, the volume is louder. Going back, the third button will basically bring the player to the controls menu and show the player the in-game control they have. The player is also allowed to modify and change any of these key bindings. For example, if I want this dash to be on the button T, I can do so by clicking save, and this dash will now be binded to the button T. But because I am very used to having dash on my spacebar, I'm going to change that back. The fourth button is the credit button, which brings the player to the credit menu and show them the team information. Lastly, we have the exit button, which obviously exit the game for the player. So when I click the start button, this will bring the player to the loading screen, which allows the player to choose either existing gameplay or delete the existing gameplay and start a new one. For this demo purposes, I'm going to start a new game. Once I click this new game button, this will bring us to the cinematic that we have, which is about 13 seconds long, so let's watch this. So once the cinematic have ended, the player will be transferred to our tutorial stage. And as you can see, when they first come into the game, they will see these stones, and these stones will basically tell the player what kind of key they need to click at the current stage of the game. So over here it's saying that I should do WASD, and once I navigate to the right side, it's telling me that I should click spacebar, and spacebar is my dash. And when I perform a dash, you can see that my stamina bar is going down. And once I stop performing stamina consuming actions, such as the dash, the stamina bar goes up. So I'm going to do that real quick. And once I get on this platform, it's telling me that I should do my left click. And we're also presented with our first enemy type, which is a self-destructing bomb. And when these get too close to you, it will try to explode and damage you. And if you're in range, your health will basically be decreased. And over here it's saying that I should click my right key. And right clicking will basically shoot out a lasso, and that will basically drag my player to the target location. And these flower petals over here are basically my health pot. If my health gets low, I can use these to regenerate my health. And over here we're presented with our second enemy type, sorry. This is basically a range enemy that shoots poison pool on the floor, and if you get in these poison pools, you'll take continuous damage. And as you can see, my health is pretty low, so I'm going to click E, and that's going to heal me and show a particle effect of me getting healed. And over here, we're presented with our third enemy type, which is the Tongue Beast. For this type of enemy, they're very huge, and they will attack you if you're horizontally aligning with them. And they will also jump at you if you get too far. The easiest way to defeat this enemy type is trying to get to like the top of his head, where it basically don't know how to respond and attack you, and never get on the same line as them. And once I get over on this platform, I will be presented with our fourth enemy type, which is a crab enemy. For this enemy, he will basically try to attack you when you get too close to him with his claws. And once he raises it back up, that's when he's ready to attack you again, like that. The easiest way to defeat this enemy is by dashing through his body, where he will basically get stuck trying to attack you, and then this is the perfect time for you to spam to get some attack in. And once he's done, you can do that again, and he will stop and try to attack you, and then you can get some hits in. And dash through again. Repeat until he's dead. Oh my god, I'm about to die. I'm gonna use the health pipe, and I'm gonna run. And dash through his body. He's gonna try to attack you. This is where I will attack him. But don't get greedy and get too much hits in, because he will start moving and attack you. And here we're basically gonna walk and go to the next stage, which will be our level 1. Once the player gets to the level 1, you can see that there was instantly 3 self-destructing bombs coming into your way. This is some of the level design that our level design team have created. And for level 1, our map is a lot more diverse and a lot larger than the first tutorial map. So it will take forever for me to go through the whole map. So for the demo purposes, I'm going to go straight to the boss and demonstrate the boss enemy to you guys. As you can see, there are a lot more enemies and it's a lot more hostile on this map. So let me just navigate through. Since I already know where the boss is, I'm going directly there, ignoring all these enemies. And here, you'll basically be presented with our first boss. This boss has 2 attack patterns. The first one is, as you can see, as soon as you enter the stage, he will throw his bomb blunts at you, and these bomb blunts will be problematic if you don't destroy them before you touch the boss. The second attack is the spikes that he spawned around the player. So for this attack, don't ever stand at the same area for too long because he will spawn them and try to attack you with it. The best way to defeat this boss is by standing somewhere for a while, and then once you see the shadow of like these spikes, run away and attack him. Just like that. And run away and come back and attack him. And once the boss is defeated, we can navigate to the next level. So the third level and our final level is our final boss. For this boss, he has three tough attacks. As you can see here, he just punched me with one of his fists. That's because I was too close to one of the edges. And for this boss, give me 1 second, I'm going to pick up this clover right here because I don't want to die. So basically every single time you walk in front of his fist, he's going to try to attack you. And these tentacles are very dangerous too because they basically track where the player is and try to attack the player. So don't ever stand at the same place for too long. My strategy is I basically wait for the tentacle to like be at a point where I know they won't reach me if I get too close to the boss, and attack the boss while the tentacle is coming down. And once the boss gets low enough, it will basically teleport and jump to another platform, like right here. And it's the player's duty to get to these platforms and trying to defeat the boss on the new platform. Over here, once again, I'm attacking this boss. I know the tentacle is coming soon, so let me... Oh no. Okay. Apparently the boss didn't want to attack me. And once the boss gets low enough again, he will teleport to the third platform, where the player will have to navigate to and trying to survive. Don't be stupid like me and get comboed over there. Like the boss literally spit a poison pool and I couldn't walk there, so I had to walk downward, which took me longer and I got punched. And basically once the boss is defeated, the planet will slowly turn green, and this is an indication where the world has been purified. And we will also be presented with the end cinematic, showing that our gruesome world has turned green. And after this is done, this will bring back the player. This will bring the player back to the main menu. Like so. And that's basically it for Nature's Grave. I hope you guys enjoyed.